home and in this place made sacred by years of love. As you do, please write in the chat that a chalice is lit on your street. And please say the words with me. They're on your pew cards. Some of you have it memorized. We are a welcoming people of diverse beliefs who commit to nourish the spirit, broaden the mind, nurture the earth, and build community. May this flame we kindle remind us to strive today and every day to love beyond belief.
Ancestors, there we go, let me try that again. This morning, as we shift from our October theme of ancestors to our November theme of generosity, it seemed like the perfect time to talk about legacies. When I look around my home, I see legacies left to me by others, both people I loved and those I knew little, if at all. I see the antique school clock that once hung in my paternal grandparents' dining room. I see a rocking chair that belonged to my maternal great-grandmother Louise, who died long before I was born, but whose genes also left me the legacy of a face nearly identical to hers. I sometimes wear this opal ring that was my grandmother Luella's, and sometimes I wear a ring that she bought for me when we were together in the gift shop of a fancy resort. Even our house itself, a 1928 bungalow, is a legacy left by nearly a century of strangers who lived in it and loved it before we did. I've also benefited from less tangible but equally important legacies. Scholarships funded by people I never knew and never will, which helped me to become a minister. A love of photography from my father, and a love of travel and the outdoors from both of my parents. A belief in the importance of education from my grandmothers, both of whom were teachers. We are all beneficiaries of legacies all the time, whether we think of it that way or not. Whether or not we inherited anything physical from our ancestors, china, furniture, jewelry, a house, money, we inherited something genetic from them. We inherited many other legacies from whoever nurtured us, whether they were family or not. Perhaps a special teacher in our childhood or college years gave us the gift of a love of music, or reading, or writing, or math. Perhaps a boss who believed in us gave us the legacy of self-confidence in our professional life. We are not just the recipients of legacies, however, but also leavers of legacies. Our reading this morning spoke of a woman who wanted to leave stories for her grandchildren so that they might continue to learn both about her and from her after her death. We leave both material and spiritual legacies, and this is true for congregations as well as individuals. Some of those legacies are relatively easy to leave, requiring only generosity with whatever material wealth or goods we may have. Some are a little more challenging, asking us to actively live out the values that we hold most dear. And still others require what I like to think of as faithful risks, doing things that are outside of our comfort zone in order to pursue the possibility of something bigger than we are currently envisioning, something more than maintaining the status quo. It's probably fairly easy to think of some of the legacies left for us by past generations of this congregation, beginning with the founders of the fellowship in 1951 and 52, and by some of its prior ministers. The most recent tangible example is our beautiful crystal singing bowl, a recent farewell gift from this congregation's past minister, Reverend Rita Capizzi. And when we look all around the congregation's building and grounds, we can see many other tangible legacies. Artwork of many kinds all throughout the building, from paintings to quilts to woodwork our peace pole, the chalice plaques on the end of every pew, and so much more. These are gifts that were given to make this space ours. Some of the artists behind these treasures are still here with us, and others are not, but their presence is still felt thanks to their gifts to the congregation. All of those are part of the physical legacy of this congregation. We have also benefited from intangible legacies: wisdom shared, generosity extended, dreams named and then pursued together, sometimes under the leadership of people who are no longer here. Those dreams began with the founding of the fellowship entirely by volunteers and included faithful risks like hiring the first minister, first very part-time, then increasing the amount of professional ministry, as well as moving to this building and then updating it significantly. Over the years, this congregation has held a balance between honoring our past and being relevant in the present, including making changes to our property to make it more accessible and useful for the people seeking a spiritual home in this era. Our property is now lovingly maintained and updated by this generation of Unitarian Universalists for those who we hope will come after us. Will our legacy be to maintain it just as it is, or will we take faithful risks like those who led the congregation's move to this location, or those who through a capital campaign in 2015 added the elevator and the new entryway and office to make the building an invitable, accessible home for not only those who were here then or have arrived here since then, but also those who come in the future? Who knows what changes we may yet make to widen our welcome further? Of course, it's not only the building and its contents that we can count among the legacies of this congregation. The founders of this fellowship left a strong, proud legacy of commitment to progressive religious education for children and youth. In fact, it was the driving reason behind the founding of the fellowship. That legacy has served families for more than 70 years and continues with our children's faith development programs today, led by Macy. All of the children raised in this congregation who live out the principles they learned here in their daily lives out in the world as adults are legacies of this congregation, whether they attend this congregation or another one, and in fact, whether or not they still consider themselves Unitarian Universalists. The values they learned here have spread in the world thanks to them. Our legacy also includes every couple, whether or not they were ever Unitarian Universalist, who has been married in this sanctuary or the previous sanctuary of this congregation or elsewhere by ministers of this congregation. Many of those couples found here a place where being interfaith or being a same-sex couple was no obstacle to the affirmation of their love and commitment, something not always available elsewhere. I am sure that if I asked each of you, you could name other legacies of the congregation that are meaningful to you. I know that I have just barely skimmed the surface. I'd like us to shift gears, though, from the legacies already gifted to us and to the wider world by earlier members of this congregation, to the legacies that we might add to the list. What do we, the Mankato Unitarian Universalists of the 21st century, want our legacy to be? What do we hope that members of this congregation 100 years from now will look back on and be proud of from this era of the congregation's history, our era? Other than continuing the important things I've already listed, what do we want to leave for future generations of the congregation and future generations of the wider community? I invite you to just take a moment or two in silence and imagine what this congregation might be like in the year 2123. What would your dream be for that congregation? Maybe we can share some of those dreams with each other in coffee hour and beyond. Excuse me. Today's imaginings about what that 100-year future congregation might be like are just the beginning of actually deciding what we want that legacy to be, and then taking concrete steps to make that legacy happen. One part of that legacy will be our continued financial support of the congregation, without which we couldn't survive. One aspect of that is legacy gifts, also called planned giving, which you've probably all heard announcements about on public radio, if you listen to public radio. Legacy gifts in which people put the congregation in their will are an important opportunity for each of us to leave a legacy of financial support beyond our own lifetimes, beyond the days when we sit in these pews and put money into the basket or submit our pledge online. However, money alone will not be an adequate legacy. As we say every week in worship before collecting our offering, we need not only money, but the time and talents of the congregation to carry out our work within these walls and beyond in the wider world. For example, the legacy of those kids I mentioned who grew up here and are now adults living grounded in Unitarian Universalist principles only exists because of dedicated children's faith development staff and volunteers. I am completely confident that we will continue to make that a part of our legacy through the 21st century. What exactly that will look like remains to be seen as we continue to evolve to meet the needs of new generations. In a time when there is radical brokenness in the world, we are called to radical acts of healing and repair. How well we live into that call will be one of the important legacies that we leave for the future. A bit ago, I asked you to imagine what you want this congregation to be in another 100 years. To be honest, we have to admit that we may not have complete control over that. What happens in the outer world certainly impacts what we do here. And even if we did have complete control over what this congregation will be in 100 years, I believe there's actually a more important question if we are thinking about our spiritual legacy rather than only the material one. In 100 years, what difference will we, the future we that will be here at that time, be making in the lives of the people connected to us in that future, both congregants and the wider community in which we serve? Did we of this era leave a legacy that we can be proud of? Did we change lives now in a way that lives on beyond the lifetimes of any of us here today? It's not enough just to keep our doors open. The real legacy we leave is the mission we serve and the difference that that mission makes for both people we know and people we will never know. Now, a mission statement in any organization, including a congregation, can become something that we recite or refer to in passing without really thinking about its implications in our day-to-day decision-making. That can even be true despite the fact that our mission statement is contained within our chalice lighting every Sunday. It can become routine. So let's take a moment to really listen deeply and carefully to our mission statement. It says, "We are a welcoming people of diverse beliefs who commit to nourish the spirit, broaden the mind, nurture the earth, and build community." Now, those things may not sound radical, but they can be if we live into them fully. Let's take it piece by piece. By being welcoming people of diverse beliefs, and thus also welcoming other people of diverse beliefs, we leave a legacy of lives changed by this faith and by all that it offers. We can live into that part of our mission statement more fully by always seeking to expand who is included and how far they are included. One small example of how we've already done this, well, two examples, one large and one small. A large one was the installation of the elevator after the capital campaign of 2015. A smaller but equally important one was adding a ramp to the youth group room so that someone with mobility needs could get into that youth group space and participate fully. I'm sure there are other ways that we can think of going forward. Compassion and generosity call us to understand and welcome those who believe differently from us, those who enjoy different styles of worship than we do, those whose souls are filled and nurtured in a different way than ours are. Our mission commits us to nurturing the Spirit. What might it look like for us to step even more fully into that aspiration? What changes might we be open to if we take this seriously, even if it means sometimes moving beyond our comfort zones? What creative ways might we find to nurture each of our spirits together, knowing that on one Sunday your spirit may be less nurtured than another, but your neighbor in the pew, that might be their best Sunday in months, knowing that each of our spirits asks for something different. I've already spoken of the legacy and the present tense commitment to children's faith development here at UUFM. We also know that faith formation is a lifelong process, not something that ends at age 18 or high school graduation. And one way that we live out this commitment, as our mission statement says, to broaden the mind, and I would add also nurture the spirit, is through the monthly Soul Matters sharing circles, the small group ministries, which meet monthly to discuss the themes that we explore in worship and in children's faith development. How, I wonder, might we expand upon that? This year, as mentioned in the announcement, we are experimenting with two other congregations of similar sizes to ours in Fridley and Northfield, with each congregation's minister offering online classes open to members of all three congregations. As a designated green sanctuary since 2015, we live our commitment to nurture the earth in a variety of ways, including our garden, our solar panels and other energy efficiency measures, our recycling program, and more. As we move further into an era marked by undeniable climate change, what might this commitment ask of us next? With our commitment to building community, we have the opportunity to be leaders in the local community and to make a difference in the national and even global communities. Many of you are already in leadership roles in the wider community. I heard about some of you from colleagues in other Mankato congregations, not UU congregations, other local congregations of a variety of denominations, even before I knew you myself. You are known in the community as leaders. What faithful risks are we being called to take as we serve the greater Mankato community, our own Unitarian Universalist faith, and the world in this particular moment in our national and global history? We won't have answers to the many questions in this sermon today. I'm doing the typical UU thing and giving you more questions instead of answers. We might not even have answers to all of those questions this year, though we will begin maybe to see the outlines of what might be possible. I invite you, each individually and together, to continue to explore these questions, not only of what each of us individually can give to the congregation for its present and future ministry, but of what faithful risks we each and we collectively can stretch ourselves to make as part of this congregation, so that we together might be the relevant, dynamic 21st century congregation that I know people are searching for. One of the small but meaningful legacies left for me in the minister's office by Reverend Rita is this message, which I have left on the dry erase board. It says, "What you're doing right now, how does it serve the mission of the fellowship, our Unitarian Universalist faith, the web of all existence?" That's so important, I'm going to say it again. what you're doing right now, how does it serve the mission of the fellowship, our Unitarian Universalist faith, the web of all existence? I keep that message on the dry erase board so that when I am working here in the office, everything I do is grounded in those questions. And it now lives in my memory so that even when I'm working at my home office in Minneapolis, I am still paying attention to those questions. Whether I'm doing an administrative task that might not seem big and important, or writing a sermon, or meeting with a congregant, either in person or on Zoom, those are the questions that I ask myself. And we can all ask those questions of ourselves, whether it's about activities here in this building or beyond these walls. We will, friends, leave a legacy. It is up to us to choose what that legacy will be and how it will transform our own lives and the lives of those who follow us. May we choose wisely. Amen, and blessed be.
Please extinguish the chalice at home and say the words with me. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
As we prepare to leave our time of shared worship, may we be mindful of and grateful for the legacies left for us by those who came before us. And may we be generous and bold as we choose what legacies we will leave for those who come after us. May that be our practice and our prayer.